This should be a good one. Rent concessions, property sitting on the market for months. Are rental rates headed for a crash? If you scroll through any Facebook group for property managers, or if you step into a local or state NARPM conference right now, one of the dominant conversations is how long rental properties are sitting on the market these last few months. We're going to dive into that topic today so that you know what to expect and what to tell your clients. Hey, property management friends, welcome to a special episode of This Week in PM. We're not live this week as we wanted to bring you a special report based on data, property management insights, and to give you some ideas to create a game plan around how to manage the extending trends that we're seeing in growing days on market and the rental rate declines all over the US. But we will be back with our normal guests and live format on the next episode. So please subscribe to Strategic PM on your favorite channel so you don't miss future reports like this and other episodes of This Week in PM. Now, if you remember, on our last show, we had Shanae from ShowMojo join us to share the trends that they were seeing around the increasing number of days on market and increased rental concessions across the nation. In fact, she shared that those numbers were higher than they had ever seen since ShowMojo began collecting data back in 2018. Now, since we recorded that show, this topic has really come into focus as a dominant concern in the industry right now. So let's talk about what sparked this conversation. What we're hearing in ScaleClub, which is RentScale's community of property managers with full-time sales professionals who are some of the fastest growing companies in the industry, is that their BDMs are bringing on new investors, and then they're having to manage expectations and do damage control as investors wonder why they don't have a tenant yet after a prolonged leasing cycle. Now, if you stick around, we'll share some of the tools that they're using to help soften those expectations and quell their concerns. Now, obviously, the ShowMojo data talks cemented this in my mind as a trend that was national and not just local to some managers. So if you want to see that data and find out when future reports will be available, then visit their website, and I will include a link below because they're constantly releasing new information online. Then I noticed multiple Facebook conversations that were full of comments on this topic. Now let's take a look at what we're seeing online. The first post I noticed was on September 21st from Rachel. Has anyone else seen a complete slowdown or stalling of the rental market? I'm in Denver and I suddenly have multiple properties just sitting, no showings, no interest, etc. So she goes on to talk about that, and there were 77 comments. And if you scroll through these, which I won't do now, you will see that over and over again, people are saying very similar things, such as it's pretty much everywhere, it's brutal here, it's a little bit of slowdown, not that bad. So I'll let you go through all of those. A few days later, good friend Peter here actually posted, spoke to a friend, an industry leader from Texas this morning. This is pretty dramatic. This time last year, rental properties were on the market an average of 38 days. This year, average of 150 days. Thoughts? So again, 64 comments. Lacey from Austin was actually dropping in some of her own data, which was great. And you can essentially see the trend that we're seeing on social media. Now, again, I'll link those conversations in the description that comes with this episode so that you can actually look at those yourself. In addition to talking to our coaches at RentScale about what our clients were experiencing, I wanted to do some good old-fashioned internet research. To add to what we learned from ShowMojo, I did find some very thorough statistics on apartmentlist.com. This is a great resource with lots of charts and lots of data. Now, rent growth from January through September averaged 4% during the steady state years of 2017 to 2019. And then it averaged a whopping 11.9% during the rapid inflationary period that we saw from 2021 to 2022. But this year, prices are being kept in check by sluggish demand as well as a robust supply of new inventory hitting the market. So they're surmising that the surging rent growth that we observed in 2021 and 2022 is now solidly behind us. And again, I will link to this in the show notes. So 4% annually was what we were used to before the artificial market conditions of the pandemic led us to expect this double-digit rent growth year after year. Now, let's look at some relevant market factors that may be adding some headwinds to what we're seeing with rent right now. Well, first is an increase in supply and a coming supply injection. Now, there are more multifamily units under construction than at any point since 1970 in the US. And many of those properties are finally becoming available for rent. After the supply shortages during the pandemic, many of these properties are finally finished and are finally available to the end consumer. So there is more multifamily supply than there has been in recent years. Second is moving fatigue. Now, many people made big moves during the last few years. They upgraded their homes or they invested in their properties because they were staying home, and they may be ready to settle in right where they are for 2 years or more, simply because of need or because of desire. Third, we believe that there's going to be a smaller qualified rental pool. Now think about it logically. As rental rates go up faster than incomes do, the acceptable pool of renters naturally decreases. So for example, if you're using a common metric of 3 times income to rent ratio, this will require some of those renters to go to less restrictive listings or combined households over time, simply because their income has not kept up with the rental rate. Now thus, that would drive down the demand for some properties that have seen sharp increases in rental rates over the last few years. Now last but not least is economic fear. Consumer confidence has fallen for the last 2 months. The expectations index, which is based on consumers' short-term outlook for income, business, and labor market conditions, declined to 73.7 in September, after falling to 83.3 in August. Now that means that expectations fell back below 80, the level that historically signals a recession within the next year. Consumer fears of an impending recession also ticked back up, which, as you can imagine, may be keeping some renters in place and helping them make conservative decisions when it comes to long-term cost commitments. I'll actually link that source as well for you in the notes. So, not that you asked, but here are my thoughts on this whole scenario. So just like 2.9% mortgages were a phase that could not be sustained forever, perhaps so were 12% year-over-year rental increases across the board. So just like home prices have not crashed, but have leveled off since rates increased, I'd assume that the same would happen to the rental market, especially in the single-family product. It's not the worst thing to see a drop of 2 to 5% after an increase of 20% in rental rates over the last few years. However, for my multifamily friends out there, I am more concerned that older, less attractive multifamily may be about to face some tough times as more modern units with resort-like amenities and move-in specials come online. There's going to be a burst of competition for those renters. But single-family housing just doesn't have that kind of swing in supply in the foreseeable future unless somehow large swaths of the population started downsizing from homes to apartments. While no one can predict things like this, the lack of affordable homes for sale, elevated interest rates, and the still tight supply of single-family homes can make it really difficult to envision a scenario where rents crash for well-maintained single-family homes in solid locations. Now, perhaps the stalled movement of rentals right now is just a boomerang effect, back to the way that it used to be. Working with hundreds of property managers in many different markets, I was used to seasonality to market rents across much of the US and Canada, where homes rented quickly and for top dollar in certain seasons, and then were more difficult to move in other seasons. But in the recent pandemic years, it seemed that inventory was so low and demand was so high that almost every unit expected rental increases no matter what time of the year it became available. And perhaps we're just back to the old normal, but on top of a solid rise in rents for those same units compared to 3 or 5 years ago, even if they do level out or decrease slightly over the next year. As apartment demand wanes throughout the remainder of the year and apartment supply improves through a strong construction pipeline, expect rent growth to cool further for the remainder of the year, and for us to return to the expectation that fall and winter are slower periods of rental demand for most markets. But the market isn't crashing, in my opinion, and we really don't know what to expect when the summer rental season returns. But I would be working to get the most of my units on a lease cycle that renews during those summer months. Now, let's talk about what tools you have to minimize the effects of this trend on your properties. Now, as you know, you've got 3 levers to get any property rented quickly: your marketing, the price, and your follow-up. If people have options, they aren't going to wait for you. Make sure your systems and staff are up to speed on the showing and leasing process. Obviously, it goes without saying that it's your job to stay on top of the market and price that property to move. And you want to promote that property far and wide and make your listing stand out. Now remember that you're not only competing with like units, but also alternatives such as brand new multifamily complexes with resort-like amenities and more build to rent new construction single family homes. I'm seeing them all over town where I live now. Now, Todd Breen posted this on Facebook last week. He gave a number of ideas on how you can make sure to maximize exposure and of your listings. And he continues to basically mimic what we're seeing, that call volume is way down. So he gives a number of reasons or techniques that you can actually adopt here to make sure that you're doing the most professional job and most aggressively leasing that property. And again, I will link to this post in the notes below. Investors need professional help to navigate this type of market. And now is the time to demonstrate your value proposition and earn that client's trust for years to come. And one more thing that you can focus on is solving the communication problem. While you can't change the market, you can change perception and expectations. I think it's a professional property manager's job to preemptively educate your clients and prospects ahead of listing their units. You have so much more data than they do. So you need to paint a clear and compelling picture of what the best game plan is and why. So share your days on market and visualize it so that it's easy to understand. Do your own market updates. We've been promoting this for years, and here are some great examples of companies that do this today, many of which are our clients here at RentScale. Here's a great LinkedIn post that I've seen from Del Val Property Management, which is close to Philadelphia, where they actually share many of their metrics, including their days on markets. So lots of data here that they're already putting out before their clients hire them or their existing clients see before renewals. I think that 1836 in Austin does a great job. They actually say transparency through data. So they've got all of their properties, their assets here. Right at the top, 3-year trend overview. They've got their average number of days on market right on the website where you can actually roll over and see it for the last 3 years, which is absolutely fantastic. And we've got the Dorman Report, a company in Colorado Springs, which has been doing this for years, and they'll actually show you the days on market, the average rent, and some fascinating data that you might take for granted as a property manager that your clients and prospects might actually really value and can help you avoid the surprises once they're actually leasing, and then you have to give them the bad news after they're already in the thick of it. So please promote that data, make it clear for them. And obviously there's a lot of places that you can find data, but we want you to focus on your data first. If you have a large enough sample size. So if you're managing over 100 properties, this is actually much more powerful than you think. So for example, we created this very simple graphic to visually show owners and potential new clients what is happening with days on market before you list the property. Now sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think in this case, it certainly is. Now you can click the link that we've included and create your own copy. And if you have the data, you can have this on your website or social media within minutes. And it's also a great thing to include in your sales material for new clients or your renewal process with existing clients. Now, your own data is more valuable than you think because you're the only place that it's available. So own those metrics and use them to tell your story about what's happening in your market. But it's also great to share third-party data, especially if it's local. So as a reminder, all real estate is local, and there are still markets seeing rental increases today. So this makes local data far more useful than national trends. Now, here's some easy examples of rental data that you can find and localize to support your story. And I've included links to these in the message below. So with Zumper, we can actually just pull up most major metropolitan cities in the US, and we can see the median rent, the year-over-year change, and the number of apartments for rent. Very simple, very high level. We've also got point 2, which takes a little work to find your exact market, but when you do, you can actually show again apartment rent, year-over-year change, and they've actually got some charts for you to use here as well. So again, there's lots of data sources, and including Redfin, too many to go into here, but see, these are some of the more common ones that we're showing for our clients. Now, the national numbers can also be helpful if they support your story, but your prospects and clients are far more likely to be able to find that information on their own or be exposed to those numbers in the media. So those are just some ideas for you, but that's what we're talking to our clients and community about right now. But enough of what I think. I want to hear from you. Are you seeing these same trends? Do you agree with my conclusion on where rents are going for the rest of the year? What did I get right and what am I missing? Drop a comment down below, and please send this to someone you think needs this information in the industry. I'm off for a nice vacation this week, and I'll definitely be thinking about these topics while I'm out hiking. We'll be back next week with another live edition. But for now, that's what's happening this week in PM.